For me, national security is abolishing child poverty. NATO is an imperialist alliance. You can't feed a hungry family with bombs, missiles, and tanks.
Welcome back to my channel. I'm Hugo Harvey, and you're about to watch my interview with Zarah Sultana, co-founder of Your Party and MP for Coventry South. I asked Zarah about her view that the UK should withdraw from NATO, which is pretty controversial at the moment. I was really grateful to Zarah for being so open to my questions, so I hope you enjoy the interview. You talk about withdrawing from NATO, cutting ties with Israel, but also not increasing military spending. Do you worry at all that the British military isn't capable of defending itself without those alliances that NATO might enshrine?
I think if you look at the example of Ireland, Ireland is a country that's not in NATO, that doesn't feel like it needs to be part of an alliance like NATO to defend its people and to defend the country. And I think we do need some defence spending. It should not be 5% of GDP that is put towards defence, especially when we've got the worst record on living standards, when we've got so many children in poverty, and we've got a cost of living crisis. I think it's about political priorities, and I think endless war is something that we should challenge. We do not need to be on a war footing. The imminent risks to the UK are in the form of financial and economic crises, the pandemic, or other pandemics in the future, and environmental crises as well. So those are the things that we should be putting putting money into and investing rather than defence.
So with the example of Ireland, I think it's an interesting one, but Ireland itself has had a defence commission that has come out and said that it wouldn't be able to repel an attack, and it currently relies on the British military to repel Russian aggression, so any Russian incursions. And those are the same incursions that happen in the UK. So, and obviously on the European front, the biggest fear is, let's say, Russian imperialism. So are you just not scared of Russia as a strategic threat right now?
I think we have to have defence spending that allows us to have, a military and a navy and an air force, but I don't think it needs to be the levels that this government is talking about. I'm not saying we strip everything back and we just kind of pretend that everything is rosy. We see many forms of imperialism. We see in Latin America, the US literally invading and attacking Venezuela, kidnapping their president and is essentially detaining him in New York under bogus charges. Equally in Europe, we see the rise of authoritarianism, we see the Russian illegal invasion of Ukraine, and it is definitely something that we have to call out and recognize, but I don't think Vladimir Putin is planning to attack the UK, and even, in the worst case scenarios that people play out, I don't think NATO is what protects its members. I think NATO is an imperialist alliance, and I think it has made the world less safe than more. And I think in particular when you think of Afghanistan and you think of Libya and you think of the destabilization that's taken place across the Middle East and you think about the death and the destruction, anyone who thinks that NATO is about peace and security, I think you would have to count the millions of lives that have been lost to see that that's not the case.
There are definitely flaws, but when you talk about NATO as something destabilizing, or like even the British public being against endless war, currently the British public are in favor of NATO membership. And I guess one of the drawing lines when you talk about NATO withdrawal is with the Greens. It's the idea that they want to reform it from within, but your party isn't interested in that. But currently the Greens are considered, they're the least trusted party in terms of defending the British public. Do you ever worry that the rhetoric on militarism goes some way to make the British public feel like you might not be protecting them?
I think we have to go out into our communities and make the argument. I think just accepting that the British public do not by their majority agree to this means that we just give up. I think is an abdication of responsibility. NATO isn't some neutral organization. It literally has arms manufacturers sitting in its committees and in its structures. And there is obviously an interest for them to push for war, to push for aggression. I think the British public would rather have their lives made materially better than for 5% of GDP to go towards defense spending. At the end of the day, you can't feed a hungry family with bombs, missiles, and tanks. And the demand of the socialist left has to be about increasing people's wages, not how many weapons we buy and how many weapons we, use abroad, and ultimately about welfare and increasing spending on our NHS, on our social safety net. And I think those arguments that are economic, that make people's lives better, are very compelling. We just have to go out and knock on doors and say, would you rather, hundreds of millions of pounds, if not billions, going to defence because apparently that is the most imminent threat, or would you rather ensure you've got a house that is not, that is habitable for living in? Would you rather having, a situation where you can pay your energy bills, you can put food on your table, you can have a good quality of life and time to spend with your loved ones? I think that's a much more compelling vision of society than, constant threat and anxiety about war, which I don't think is necessarily accurate.
Would you have time for one more question?
Yes, sure.
So I guess it's going to be a bit combined because I guess firstly, do you feel like it has to be presented as an either or, since all the social and welfare state is sort of based on the national security and preserving national security? And then secondly, this is a sort of open-ended question of, you talk a lot about the interests of arms manufacturers as private entities receiving the defence money, and BAE Systems, the UK's largest arms manufacturer, used to be a national company before it was privatised under Thatcher. So I'm interested, do you think there's a way to have all these things work together, that you can have nationalised arms manufacturers that employ people, a military that might be worker-led, that actually can amplify some of the socialist values rather than simply counter them?
I think we need to have a just transition from the weapons factories that are currently producing bombs, missiles, drones that are killing people, and how can those skills be transferred to producing things that are better for the environment. I think that in terms of a worker-led transition is incredibly important, but I think ultimately it's about us having a message of making people's lives better without increasing the profits of BAE Systems, of Elbit, and the destructive nature that they have both on our civil liberties but also on democracy as a whole. And I think that is something that your party will stand for. I think when we are speaking to the country about NATO, it's about, I guess the point that you made about national security. For me, national security is abolishing child poverty. National security for me is people being able to go to a GP whenever they need to and get the healthcare that they need. National security to me is disabled people not being treated with complete utter contempt when they just need support in their lives. And I think it's that vision of us being a more positive country that provides for its citizens, that for me is a better vision of what we can provide to the country than kind of war, genocide, and having Elbit and BAE Systems kind of draw up the manifesto.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Zarah Sultana. Please let me know what you thought in the comment section below. If you're interested in more of my content, check out my interview with Zach Polanski, or subscribe to see my upcoming interview with Harriet Lam. Otherwise, thank you for watching.
Appreciate that. Now it's time for